So without further ado, I would like to introduce Peter Knight.
Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me? Yes. Is it too loud? Yeah. I know. So I'm just loading my presentation up. It's P, the red P.
Yeah, so it's either being a bit slow or it's loading.
Just reloading from the stick then.
There you go.
Let there be light. So good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank the Gatekeeper Trust for inviting me to do a talk for you this morning. I should have been on this afternoon, but I've been promoted to the opening act, or else perhaps I've been demoted to be the warm-up act. I don't know. It's all about, is your glass half full or half empty? So let's hope there'll be a good start if this. Okay. Right. Okay. So is that a lot of? There seems to be a lot of light on the screen. Is it this light? Did you bring it perhaps this way slightly? That's better, isn't it? With symbolism, you need to see the colours. Thank you very much.
Or if we put this one on, Peter, and then it's shining away from the screen.
Okay.
But I do need light from this side.
Okay, fine.
Because the camera.
I'll be your hamster. You get it all right with me, won't we?
Thank you.
Okay. So my book about symbolism has been out for about 8 months now, and I'm going to change it slightly today. Some of you might have already seen the talk. I'm changing the title from Stolen Images, Pagan Symbolism and Christianity, which looks at the book looks at how virtually all the Christian symbols have an ancient origin. I have a job of thinking one that doesn't actually. I'll explain why that is. But I changed it this morning slightly to Stolen Images, Nature, Symbolism and Christianity. Because of the nature of Gatekeeper Trust of the event, I'm going to concentrate on the symbols and the myths, and I think and the context that are to do with nature, and then I'm going to add some more to do with what I'm into at the moment. That's walking the land with intent and things like that. So it's not the normal Stolen Images talk, but hopefully you'll find something of interest. So there is a difference between signs and symbols. Signs are designed to be understood in a split second. They are instructions, advice, or warnings. Symbols, on the other hand, may be embellished with endless meanings and interpretations, often beyond the grasp of the rational mind. They are archetypes. They are things that different people at different times will pick up on the same concepts. And I love this quote by somebody. He said, myths are always pregnant with new meanings. Of course, you can go back to a story and a myth years after you first encountered it and get a totally different meaning, because, of course, you have moved on, and that myth can mean something totally different. This is the beauty of myths and symbols. They are always pregnant with new meanings. The real magic lies not in seeking new landscapes, but in seeing new eyes, and that is certainly true of the Gatekeeper Trust. And lay hunters and dowsers, we go where archaeologists fear to tread. Any archaeologists here this morning? No? Oh, good. No problem. I do talk to archaeological societies, and I live to tell the tale. But we go and we look. Archaeologists work with this, and I think we work with this. And I think that's how the shamans and the ancients also related to symbols and related to the land. Oops, hello, it's jumped twice. The first part of the lookbook, I kind of get across that the first symbolism, of course, is nature symbolism. There's symbolism all around in nature, and nature ignited man's preoccupation with symbols. There's natural mathematics and sacred geometry, of course, everywhere you look. The Fibonacci sequence in this Nautilus shell, the hexagram, and the Fibonacci sequence again in this flower. And I think it was Da Vinci, I might be misquoting, but the person, but there was a saying that nature never breaks her own laws. I love that one. It's so true. Nature does what it has to do, no more, no less, and she's a great teacher in that respect. So I look at natural, in the book, I look at natural structures that have been regarded as sacred by early man. Some fabulous examples I've encountered on my travels here. This is actually the elephant dolmen on Sardinia. That's a natural occurring basalt outcrop. and it's been made into a tomb underneath. This is El Fungi rock on Sardinia. I don't know if you can see me, but I'm actually sitting right at the base there. Just to put, so that's probably 30 feet high. I would love to see the frying pan that this fits into. I mean, this is a huge mushroom-shaped rock, and it's surrounded by Bronze Age ritual sites. So clearly, the shamans thousands of years ago who were using hallucinogenic mushrooms, we know that the Shua would have regarded this with great sanctity. And this is a tree spirit. We've all seen spirits in trees. This is actually inside a 2,000-year oak at Alton Priors, not far from here in Wiltshire. So if anybody wants to see that this weekend, I can send you in the direction. She's just beautiful, isn't she? It keeps moving on to, let's go back again. Okay, symbolism goes right back to prehistory, of course. The famous Venuses, usually female, not exclusively though. Cave art, of course, thought to be perhaps sympathetic magic, where you're getting in touch with the spirit of the animals of the herd so that they will give their self up to the hunt. And of course there's the famous spirals and cup marks you see all around Europe, which again some people think are entoptics, where in other words they are images that shamans have seen in trance, and when they come out of trance they put those images on the rock. But I mean, a spiral has multiple layers of meaning. This is the beautiful thing about symbols. You know, do they have to mean one thing? I don't think so. This is one of the stones at Avebury. If any of you have been on my Avebury tour or come on next year, I'll show you that there's lots of these faces in the stones. You've probably already seen some at Avebury yourself. And they're not a result of weathering, they're a result of purposeful intent. People selecting these stones that resembled something, and then they've been put up as a stone circle. Perhaps when they saw a rock with a face on it, perhaps they thought that there was spirit in the rock. So of course by bringing that stone into the stone circle, you're bringing the spirit in with you. A lot of Aboriginal cultures around the world, they have a lot of natural objects, a lot of natural rocks that have faces on them. And again, symbolism through the Iron Age, through Malta. You know, symbolism predates writing. When you think about it, when a toddler first grows up, it learns to do drawings first, doesn't it, in paint. You give a toddler a paintbrush and it can make a right mess of your kitchen, can't it? But it will create a work of art long before it can write. And mankind was the same. We were using symbols and symbolism. We found evidence in Neanderthal sites that it looks like there was some ritual symbolism going on there. So long before writing came along, man was using symbols. Sometimes the landscape can be used as a medium. The Cern Giant, the White Horse at Uffington, so sometimes even the very landscape itself can be used to express man's spirituality. I think the landscape is an open book onto which memories can be emblazoned. By both man and spirit, the land lives. This is the thing, I think, to get across. The land does live. These structures have been put on the landscape to enhance it. Really, that's the best way of putting it. The spirit of the land is already there. Then cometh the cross. I do quite a long section showing the very interesting way that Christianity, I won't say swept across Europe, staggered across Europe, I really is the best way to put it, on its over several hundred years in a couple of waves of conversion. But in a nutshell, really, Christianity absorbed the ancient and universal symbols and myths to promote its own agenda. Why wouldn't it? There's all these universal archetypal symbols and myths out there telling lessons and parables that you would like to get across in your religion. If I was starting a new religion today, I would dip into all the symbolism that's already around to help promote my stories, my agenda. Another difference, Jesus is just born once, of course, in the new religion, whereas the sun gods who we replaced are perpetually born every year. I'll come back to that later. To me, the biggest change between Christianity and Judaism, really, was the denial and denigration of the divine feminine. That is the biggest change. The earth as divinity was denied, and I think mankind hasn't recovered since, to be honest. And I'm not just having to go with Christianity. All the major religions today do not regard the earth as sacred as we once did as a species. There's a new God in town. It's quite a long section that I show how when Christianity came in, it sought to take over sites that were already sacred. Again, these sites are great power centres. They're where people are already gathering. Two reasons for that. You absorb the energy of the site. Your church is energised if you stick it on the side of a stone circle. But also there's a political reason, of course. You stick your church where people are already gathering, then it's like there's a new god in town. Come in to have a cup of tea, or whatever they did then, so it helps conversion as well. You don't have to get people to leave their sacred sites anymore. Pope Gregory in 595 AD, he said, let's not destroy the pagan sites, let's put our churches on them. What a shrewd move that was. A few great examples here. The Hope Bee, a Norman church on top of a Neolithic tomb. This is Knowlton, not far from here in Dorset. A Norman church in a Neolithic henge, and this is one I found in Portugal. This is actually a Neolithic dolmen. The capstone is just out of view there, and they put a chapel right in the middle of it. It is the omphalos of the village. Even now it's in the centre of the market square. So again, there's lots of examples of what I call site evolution, where the same sacred site can be used by successive religions. Glastonbury is a good example. Jerusalem, of course, is a fabulous example where one locality can be sacred to many religions. I do a whole section as well about the turning year. Some of you, of course, will already be aware how a lot of the dates in our calendar today and our celebrations are pagan-based. Samhain turned into Halloween and All Hallows Eve. Pilgrimages, of course, can often ignite. The calendar can often ignite pilgrimages. Easter and Christmas. We never know when Easter's going to be every year, do we? Nobody ever knows until you get your new diary, because of course Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon after equinox. So Easter is lunar based even today. So it's a movable feast, if you like, a movable feast of Easter eggs. And of course Christmas I'm going to come back to. Of course I've got a whole page in my book discussing how the early church fathers tried to decide on a date for the birth of Jesus. It was anything from January, February, right through to April, one of the church fathers suggested. In other words, they hadn't got a clue. So December the 25th was eventually chosen because it's Jesus, as the sun is reborn, after solstice, the new God is reborn, if you like. So I'll come on to that later. I'm just going to pick a few chapters from the book that deal with nature and nature things, as I said today. One of the things is trees, of course. A very ancient concept is the axis mundi, the cosmic tree, the tree of life, this idea that there is something metaphysical, if you like, linking the underworld to man's realm, to the higher realms, to heaven, if you like. The Egyptians had their tree of life. This is one from Malta. This is one I found in a tomb, a Neolithic tomb in Brittany. And this is the tree of life by two very Rastafarian-looking dudes from Mesopotamia. So again, this idea of this cosmic tree is very, very ancient and virtually universal. And of course it had to be absorbed into Christianity, and it was. These vaulted ceilings we get sometimes. You go into a cathedral and it's like standing in a forest, isn't it? With these huge columns which are often foliated. This is the famous apprentice pillar, of course, at Rosslyn Chapel, which has the spiralling foliage around like the strands of a DNA. So how can this concept be brought into the church? And I had to think about this actually, and then I came across this one day at Corsham in Wiltshire, and this is a living tree. This is a scene of the crucifixion, but the tree is living. And of course, this means, of course, that you can still get from the earthly realms to the heavenly realms, but now it's slap bang in the middle of the tree of life. So again, that's, I think, why that shape is chosen, because if the crucifixion did take place, it's almost certainly on a cross that was that shape, the saltire cross, which is the main shape that the Romans used for crucifixion. So of course, by bringing the cross upright, it's now the tree of life, and you stick Jesus on it, and again, the rest is history, as they say. The green man, we're all, and the idea of the green lord and lady, the fertility of the land, of course, is very, very ancient. Here's some examples from other cultures. Geb, the green god, fertility god. Osiris, any of the original paintings of him are usually shown in green. Green Tara, representing, she's the mother of all Buddhas apparently. And even Islam, this is Al-Qadiyah, the green one, who's a bit of a hermit and hangs out in the woods and forests. So is the Islamic equivalent really. He always walks about with a dead fish in his hands, so I don't know whether he had many friends. But he hung out in the forest anyway, so he wasn't too bothered. So of course now, by bringing the Lord of the forest, this image of the forest, into the church, of course it's now God that blesses the fields, not Pan, not Sinunus, all those pagan gods. It's now God that's blessing the fields. To me, when the green man returns my gaze, it's the very soul of nature that's looking back at you. Just make eye contact with some of these ones. They really peer into your consciousness. All these three are featured in the book: Rosslyn, Wiltshire, Dorset, and it's representing the concept, which is very ancient, that the land lives. And again, please seek out the Green Lord and the Green Lady. Carrying on from that, of course, the phallus, which is literally the staff of life, represents the yang fertilizing principle of nature, which has to be there. Nature isn't all feminine, goddess, goddess, goddess. The goddess has as much yang present as there is yin present, or else life cannot take place as we know it. So you have to have both. And the ancients recognized this. So this is Min, the phallic god of the fields of Egypt. This is the Cern giant, of course. And obscenity isn't an ancient concept. There's a difference, of course, between obscenity and morality. Obscenity isn't an ancient concept. In the Bible, there's several nude people in the Bible. One is in the Bible, King David danced naked before the Ark of the Covenant, and he wasn't struck down dead. So, it's the idea that there's this male principle in all of the cosmos. I mean, this leaves very little to the imagination. This is the largest megalith still standing anywhere. This is in Britain. There's myself at 6 foot. So, and there's another 4 meters in the ground. And I also noticed that in a lot of lung barrows, although lung barrows generally are womb tombs, they generally represent the female principle, I've noticed over the years there's always at least one phallic-shaped stone right in the centre somewhere. You've just got to find it. Again, it's this balance of yin and yang. You have to have the two. So, and of course, it was brought into the church. All of these images are Christian images, built and carved by God-fearing masons, paid for by God-fearing gentry or bishops or the church. Originally, I think these represented the regenerative nature of the power of nature. You're putting images on the outside of the church, if you like, that people might recognise. Yet later, only later, I think, these images became to represent sins of the flesh. That's which we're not supposed to do. Which always seemed a bit peculiar to me. Why do you put images on the outside of the church of things you don't want people to do? Yes, if I'm holding a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, you don't set up a free bar in the corner. You're not going to encourage people, have things on show that you don't want people to do. It's because originally these had another meaning, right back in Norman times, Knights Templar times, that later on, of course, to ensure they didn't have to all be taken down, it's now sins of the flesh. Again, these carvings, these Christian carvings with phalli are echoes of the wisdom of the land, believe it or not. It's an ancient echo of the yang principle of nature, taken on by Christianity. Opposed to that, of course, complementing that is the divine yoni, and you find these everywhere in nature. St. Nectan's Glen, where the life-giving fluid of the goddess comes through. This is a cave where we do shamanic drumming every year near Bristol, and there's the divine yoni that we walk in, and it's a fabulous place, and it's even present at Avebury. The divine yoni, that which births the whole universe, and does it quite naturally, of course. Of course, in the book of Genesis, it's now the male god that births the universe, which is a very interesting physiological thing to achieve, that I think, really. But in ancient cultures, of course, it's the goddess who has all the equipment to birth the universe, if you like. So, and you see it all around in ancient cultures. One thing, one I'll show you here, is part of what I call a new project we're working on, the Dartmoor Mindscape, which I'll mention about later on. This is the Tolman stone, this huge, massive stone up on Dartmoor, and it's got a 1 metre long hole, and in my novel you'll see the hero actually plunges through the hole into the river below as a sign of rebirth through this hole, and the hole has Druid associations, no surprise there. So again, it's another example of the divine yoni. And of course that was brought into the church. Again, you're giving people images they will recognise. and they're not offended by it, which is the other thing. That one actually is under the crypt at Canterbury Cathedral. This is a French example. This one is from Royston Cave. There's the shield in a gig next to the sword. A lot of people think some of these were done by the Templars. So you've got the female principle, the yin, and there's the shaft of the sword, the male principle. So again, next to each other in harmony. And of course, this is the world famous Sheila Nigig, very alien looking, isn't she? On the church at Royston, at Kilpeck, and she's right next to the main door. She's not hidden away in shame. This was paid for by the church and carved by very skilled masons at no little cost. So these aren't whimsies, they do mean something divine. The areola, the mandorla or nimbus is often seen in churches surrounding either the Virgin Mary, sometimes God, but usually Jesus. It's this huge vulva shape, really, hole of flaming, beautiful flames and usually often very colourful. But again, you find it in other cultures. In Eastern cultures, this is one, a Greek one, around the sun god Helios, and this is, of course, around Buddha, often the shape of a lotus leaf, of course, in the case of the Buddha. But everything comes from something else. And usually it's like, it's usually to accentuate something. You know, like a teacher will write something on the blackboard, then he'll put a circle around it if he wants to emphasise it. And that's literally what's happening here. So everything comes from something else, I found. And the halo, you'd think there couldn't be anything more Christian than a halo. Oh no. So I think they started with the Egyptian images of the sun disk. I really do. This is a Greek one around the goddess Artemis, and this is a Hittite one, very much a halo, I think you'll agree. Buddha, often shown with a halo. This is one I saw in Edinburgh Museum. It's accentuating his divinity, his enlightenment. And I could fool you perhaps into saying that this is an early Roman depiction of Jesus, but it isn't. It's the sun god Apollo. So you can see why the new god, if you like, that's replacing this one, had to be shown as being equally divine. The halo had to be there. So this is almost a seamless transition, isn't it, really? So again, we're sticking to nature, so I've gone for the serpent, which I think represents the life force and the kundalini of the planets. Dowsers often speak of dowsing serpents. It represents earth energies, I think, and the life force of the planet to so many ancient cultures. This is the famous Aztec one in the British Museum, thought to represent Quetzalcoatl, and again it's male and female. The two are coming together. The famous Minoan snow goddess, she's holding two snakes, male, female, yin and yang. I think the ancients are expressing what they see in nature, which is the balance of yin and yang. It's always there, unless we interfere with it. So the rainbow serpent, the famous one, carved by the Aborigines in Australia, and even the Native Americans, of course, have the great serpent mound in Ohio, many, many hundreds of metres long, and either disgorging or eating the cosmic egg. So again, there's this balance, I think, of male and female, although that's, of course, open to many interpretations as to what that means. But it's a primal image, this idea of a serpent, and of course it's brought into Christian iconography. This is St. Luke, who's the patron saint of hospitals, doctors, nurses, anything to do with healing, and there he's got the caduceus around him. But blow me, this is Asclepius. This is ancient Greek. He's the god of doctors, healing, nurses, the same things. And if you're wondering why he only has one serpent, it's because the myths say that when Asclepius does healing, he changes into a serpent. So this is the second serpent. So the serpent very much associated with healing and with knowledge in ancient cultures. Of course, there's the caduceus representing Hermes and Mercury. Of course, Miller and Broadhurst saw the sun and the serpent energies very much as a caduceus going across the land. These two serpents on a monument on the floor in Stoke Trista marked where I dowsed two serpents coming together. The dowsing rods were spinning around above these serpents. I took the Somerset dowsers to Crediton recently, and where the Michael and Mary current cross under the choir area, These two serpents are on the pillar right next to them. They're the only serpents in the whole of Crediton Cathedral, and they just happen to be where the Michael and Mary current flow together. What a coincidence! Which of course it isn't. These are the original Norman, i.e. Knights Templar pillars. Fabulous, isn't it? And of course, related to the dragons, again, I can only skim through all these sections, but the dragon, of course, is a universal mythological creature. I think, again, it represents the life force of the earth, the life force of the planet. There are dragons flowing across the land today. Every time I get my dowsing rods out, I can douse for them, the dragon lines. This is a Greek one. Sometimes dragons can be legless. I don't think they've been in the pub. They're just water dragons, and of course the Chinese embrace dragons at their New Year celebrations. And this was the eclipse. Some pictures of the eclipse I took last April. Remember we had the partial eclipse in southern England, and of course in a lot of eastern cultures especially, they think there's a dragon about to devour the sun, which is why they go out and bang instruments and drums to frighten the dragon away. And it always works. So why wouldn't you? So dragons, and of course they are brought into Christianity. But the idea of a dragon slayer who conquers all evil, representing the old ways, the pagan ways, or any foe, to be honest, goes back much earlier than that. The earliest dragon slayer I found is actually Gilgamesh doing battle with Tiamat, who was the dragon queen. So even all those years ago, the goddess, that was just one of the first signs that perhaps later on the goddess is going to be on the run. So you can see where this symbol comes from. Very easy to see where George and Michael slaying the dragon came from. There are other archetypal, there's lots of layers in the Michael and George thing, but I haven't really got time to go into them. And this is the famous font at Avebury. You're not too far from here. If you're here from the weekend, go up to St James's in Avebury, and this is the famous font featured in The Sun and the Serpents. And it's got two dragons on. Here's the bishop here with his crozier, and he's holding what's supposed to be a Bible. It looks more like a pint to me. Bishops never eat pint beer, of course. And he's subjugating and putting the staff on the two dragons, which is where the Michael and Mary current come into Avebury. So again, and this is the original Knights Templar font. So people are leaving us things, whereas people were once, the early Christians were much closer to the earth. And you can find dragons everywhere. Can you see them? Yeah. There's his head, his folded up wings. It's all about seeking out the dragon. This is Chapelle Saint Gildas in Brittany. And even today we talk of the rock as being the living rock. Isn't it just? Isn't it just? So please seek out the dragon wherever you go, because she's there, just waiting to be perceived. And if you go in this little chapel, which is literally built in the rock, you'll find a little stone. And if you hit it with a piece of flint, it goes boom and goes on for ages. So it's the singing dragon. You're right in his belly when you're doing that. It's fabulous, that interaction in the landscape. And that's why the chapel is there, because of the dragon, I would suggest. I'm going to deal with just a couple of characters from the Bible. Of all the characters in the Old Testament, one of the favourites, I think, of somebody who really existed is Moses. I think he was a Bronze Age shaman and magician. The two characters in Egyptian texts called Tuthmosis and Tutmosis, both recorded about the same time that Moses lived. Both characters were taken in, one of them was found in reeds, another one was taken in to be trained as a priest, and they were both disgraced and thrown out of Egypt. The story sounds familiar, doesn't it? But this guy went on vision quest. This is Stukely's, of course, archetypal drawing of a druid, and I think it fits Moses very well. This is Moses doing his impersonation of Charlton Heston. And I think he does it really well, actually. But this guy goes on vision quest. He spends time on his own. He does what we'd see as magic. It's classic shamanic practice. And he goes up to Mount Sinai, of course, and has lots of visions, which is a classic shamanic practice, and of course carried out by saints all through Christianity. They take themselves off onto some holy mountain and they see angels and they see characters. But of course one person's angel is another person's dragon, is another person's UFO, depending where your culture is at, where your head is at. So in the Bible it says Moses came down from Mount Sinai and he had horns. He's often depicted with horns. I thought, what on earth is this? But a recent scholar has reinterpreted these original texts of the Bible and said, no, it doesn't say that at all. It should say giving off horn-like rays. So, and some windows do depict these rays. I think when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, he was in such a state of bliss, they could see his aura. That's what I think. This guy is in a state of bliss. And what of course he brought down from Mount Sinai is the Ten Commandments, but are they Hebrew at all? This is about the time that the archaeologists have placed Moses. This is spell 125, read out at funerals from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is the deceased speaking to the living from the other side. I have done no falsehood, I have not robbed, I have not misconducted myself, I have not blasphemed. This is where Moses got the Ten Commandments from. He was already aware of them. He'd been born up since a kid with these in his consciousness, and he became a priest, an Egyptian priest. So of course when Moses needed a set of laws for the Hebrews, they were already in here. He just put them down. So in a sense they were given to him by God, but I would suggest an Egyptian God. So you can see everything comes from somewhere where older than you think it is. The divine feminine, of course, is one of the great aspects of ancient cultures and spirituality. Often the moon is seen feminine. Silbury Hill, I think, is the pregnant tummy of the Earth Mother. And in the winter, when it floods, which it always has done since it was built, it's the cosmic egg. So again, it all depends how you look at it. Lots of examples around the world of twin-shaped hills. These are the breasts of Aphrodite at Mykonos, sacred to the ancient Greeks. So again, the goddess is all around if you know where to look. One aspect of that, of course, is the moon goddess. Not exclusively, but mainly seen as feminine in ancient cultures. There are a few exceptions. And in Roman and in Greek art often shown as a crescent. And even in this place, this 30,000-year-old carving from an ancient cave, on this horn are 13 notches representing the 13 lunations of the year. This was worked out 30,000 years ago, which is quite amazing, isn't it? So what do you do with the moon goddess? How are you going to incorporate her into Christianity? Well, it's easy. She's there. In all three pictures, she's standing on the crescent moon. And her colours of blue and white are always said to represent the Virgin's purity. They're nothing to do with that at all. They're representing the white of the moon and the blue of the waters of the ocean. She's the divine feminine. There's the crescent moon on each one. Another aspect, of course, is the Great Mother Goddess. I think what was spoken about over this weekend again, and there's lots of examples of the Great Mother with her solar consort, her son on her lap. This is a Mesopotamian, Sumerian one, I think. This is a Hittite one, the mother and the son, and this is a Neolithic one from Malta. And of course, is it going to? Yay. And of course, this is the famous Egyptian one of Isis suckling the sun god Horus. Even Krishna is suckled by his what do you call that? When a mother takes over the nursing, somebody else takes over the wet nurses, I guess. This is happening there, and of course you can see why this had to be incorporated in this classic as one of the archetypal and most effective and divine, I think, divinely effective images of Christianity. There's the mother and there's Jesus, and of course it's the Earth Mother and the new solar god. The Earth Mother and the new solar god. So there was no way that this image could be left out of Christianity, because it's one of the major symbols of the ancient religions. So that was the mother goddess. There are lots of them examples in the book. But what about the solar god, this great solar god, all the male gods that represent the sun? Hundreds of them across the ancient world. And I think the sun god of the ancients was metamorphosed and reborn in Jesus. He takes over the role of the male, the new divine masculine deity. So this is why you can have an almost seamless passage from the old gods to the new. So a question for you: who was famously born on December the 25th to a virgin mother, died and rose 3 days later? Well, the answer, of course, is Jesus. I'll put the answer up there. I know it might be a bit difficult question that before you've had a cup of tea. So I put the answer for you. But hang on a second. Let's have another look at that question. December. Oh, that list should be in the middle. Oh, it's because you're on Mac, isn't it? It's shunted over a bit. Oh dear.
Sorry.
I'm going to have to do this from memory then. So all these gods were born on December the 25th to a virgin mother and were involved in a resurrection. We've got Horus, Dionysus, Osiris, Bacchus, Baal, Adonis, Krishna, Attis, and there were several more. That's, well, I could fit them on the slide after all. So there's about 20 of them. So Jesus is not the reason for the season, I'm afraid. This is a Roman depiction of Mithras, who's representing the rebirth of the sun on the 25th of December, because that's the first time after the solstice you can usually detect the days and getting longer and the sun getting higher. So this is Mithras. He's been in the cave for 3 days and he's come out again. Oh, fabulous. So look at all these are all the attributes and myths associated with several ancient gods and heroes. Look at all these. Do you recognise these? They're all to do with Jesus. So none of these are to do with Jesus, and all of them are to do with Jesus. All these attributes had to be put on to Jesus. Shepherd, there's lots of gods known as shepherds. Healing, of course, resurrection and rebirth. And a lot of them often spent time alone in caves or in the wilderness or in the desert, as Jesus did. He went, didn't he, into the desert to confront the devil, which is his ego. It's as simple as that. He's gone to get his mind out of the way. He's gone to have a shamanic experience. Several ancient gods are known as the Lamb of God, the Lamb God, or the Divine Shepherd. This is Hermes Prehistoric. This is Greek. So, of course, it's very, very similar, isn't it? So, of course, Jesus is the sacrificial lamb. He's the altruistic Christ. The lamb is one of the favourite animals to be sacrificed in a ritual in ancient cultures. So, of course, that's why Jesus is known as the lamb. He's sacrificing himself in this altruistic act. But again, everything is usually older than you think. So I found this. This blew my mind away when I found this. 9th century BC. This lovely Assyrian god Shamash is sporting a very nice crucifix. Because it's a sun symbol, Neolithic, Bronze Age. The sun, the cross is maybe an ancient symbol for the sun. So of course, it had to be Jesus' symbol. It couldn't be anything else really, could it? It's nothing to do with his crucifixion. Are you going to go on, my friend? Yes, you are. So, was Jesus a shaman? Yes, I definitely think he is. He went on vision quests, he did miracles, he did healing. He walked on the water, which several ancient gods do that. Have done that. This was very interesting. In Alexandria Bay a few years ago, those underwater excavations you might have seen on the telly where they're trying to unearth what they think is Cleopatra's temple and that sort of thing underneath the water in Alexandria. Well, they trawled this up out of the mud. They couldn't date it any more accurately than that because of the style of that. But on the side were the words Jesus the magician. So even his earliest followers regarded him as a shaman, as a magician, as a druid or whatever. It doesn't say Jesus the Son of God, does it? It says Jesus the magician. So did Jesus live or not? To me it doesn't matter. Why does it matter if Arthur lived or not? Does it matter if all the events in the Mabinogion took place or not? You know, it doesn't rob from their wisdom, does it? To me the answer, whatever the answer, it doesn't devalue his message of love and compassion. And of course Jesus is just embodying the Christ consciousness which has occurred in many prophets, I would suggest, over the years. So this is a symbol of John the Baptist, but this is actually how I see Jesus. This is how I see. They always depict John the Baptist in animal clothes, and he's like, you know, all coming out of the desert, he's all scrawny and all that. This is Jesus. This is how I see him. After he lives out in the desert, we know he spent time with the Essenes. This is how I can relate to Jesus, warts and all, I would suggest, rather than John the Baptist. Okay, right. So we've got the divine masculine and the divine feminine, but of course where creation happens is where yin and yang come together in the whole of nature. And all the gods have consorts, all the major gods have consorts or wives, because the male and female have to come together for creation to take place on any level. So this is the Naga of India, this is Sumerian, This is classical. This is one of the famous erotic carvings from India. So it's just a personification of the creative forces of nature. Okay, so you could say if Jesus took over the role of the sun gods, where's his consort? Well, of course, the answer is Mary Magdalene. She's been there all the time. There's been lots of books and a film about the subject, but again, I needed to convince myself. And again, it was only in the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD that Jesus was proclaimed divine. He was only from that date the Son of God. Before that, he had lots of people following him. He was a prophet. He was somebody worthy of adoration, of course, and even starting a religion, if you like. But of course, once you make him divine and the Son of God, he can't possibly be married. He can't possibly have a wife and do all the things that husband and wives do. So no way. So of course, that's why Mary Magdalene is so demonized in the Bible. But I think Mary Magdalene and Jesus came together for the ancient practice, which we're pretty sure the Templars did at Hieros Gallus. It's making love with divine intent. And I think Mary Magdalene was a priestess. A lot of people say, like Lynn Pickney, she was a priestess of Isis. I think she was the spiritual and metaphysical equal of Jesus. Why would he be with anybody else? You know, she's his equal, I believe. She's anointing him there, and only Mary Magdalene is ever shown at the foot of the cross. And in Roman law, when somebody was being crucified, only the wife of the condemned man was allowed to come near the cross. So that's an interesting one. Time keeps forward too. There you go. She's anointing Jesus, of course, you remember, with her alabaster jar, her oils, drying it with her hair. Christos means the anointed one. Anointing was a sacred marriage ritual by Hebrews and Sumerians, and a ritual carried out by Egyptian priestesses, because this is against the law. At that time, especially if any Hebrew woman was to just touch another man in public, she could be taken out and stoned on the spot. No trial or anything. So the disciples didn't like her anyway. If they weren't married, this would have been the perfect opportunity to get rid of her. But they were married, which is why they couldn't. And the marriage at Canaan, the wedding at Canaan, where Jesus changes water to wine. What a party trick that is! I would love to do that one. I think that's his own wedding. We're never shown in the Bible whose wedding it is. It's theirs. It's theirs. They both knew the end was coming. Mary Magdalene is the only person present at all the key scenes in the Passion. She's there when the angel said, "He is risen, why are you looking?" She's there when Joseph Arimathea takes him out and puts him in his tomb. And of course, who's the first person that Jesus appears to when he rises after 3 days? Of course, it's his wife. He'd have probably got a real telling off if it hadn't have been, really, let's face it. And also, she's the only one who would get it. All the others would freak out, wouldn't they? They didn't believe her when she went back to tell them, do you remember? It had to be Mary Magdalene, because she got it. She knew it was coming, I would suggest. And of course, she addresses him as rabbi. At that age, anybody called a rabbi generally, and even today it's encouraged, they have to be married, generally, rabbis. So I thought that was interesting. And you probably know that nowhere in the Bible does it say Mary Magdalene is a prostitute. This is the real Mary Magdalene. This is my Mary Magdalene. I found this in a window in Devon. God, breasts on a stained glass window. It's the only example I've ever seen in my life. It's fantastic. So this is the real Mary Magdalene. Wise, sensuous, feisty, strength of character, wealthy and independent. She's a priestess. She lived life on the edge. What a role model to men and women, I would suggest. The Mary Magdalene archetype can also connect us to the land through conscious intent, as well as through physical union on the land. The ancient sacred act of Hieros Gallus, whereby love permeates the land. That's the message to me of the Magdalene. And of course, this is great. This is why Mary Magdalene was so vilified. Sometimes people try to expose what's wrong with you because they can't handle what's right with you. Yes? They were jealous of Mary Magdalene because she got everything. Most of the metaphysical stuff went right over the other disciples' heads, except John the Divine. He's the other special dude who got it. So Was Mary Magdalene pregnant? Had she had a baby already? I found this in Dorset. She's resting her alabaster jar on a very swollen tummy, I think you'll agree. And this is the famous one, of course, where Mary Magdalene is wearing Magdalene blue. That's the colour that I've got on the cover of the book. And of course, look at this, it's just wonderful. This had to be hidden away in mould to survive. It's the divine masculine and the divine feminine, yin and yang in harmony. This is an aspect of the wisdom of the land. This is all part of it. And it's something we can do ourselves. I'm not saying you all have to get married. And then I found this, which is causing quite a stir. In St Neots, when I was following the St Michael line. 45. This is a scene of the crucifixion, obviously, and here's a lady with long blonde hair, which is usually how Mary Magdalene is depicted, with blonde hair or red hair, and she's holding a baby up to show Jesus. Yeah, it's the only scene I've seen anywhere in the world of that happening. Is she showing Jesus, his child? Because a lot of researchers, I think Link Pictus is one of them, said the reason we have these different names for Mary Magdalene's child is because she had two. She'd already had a child prior to the crucifixion, and she was pregnant with another one at the time of the crucifixion. And I think this window is amazing. Isn't it just amazing? John the Baptist even hailed Jesus when he saw him as the bridegroom. And Jesus said, even when he was about to be arrested, "Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them?" That one is actually in the Bible. And in the book of Revelations, when Jesus' second coming is announced, the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife has made herself ready for him. So clearly Jesus is allowed to be married at the second coming. Yay! So, and William Blake, of course, who we all know and love, what a great mystic. This is part of the Song of Jerusalem. She walks upon our meadows green, the Lamb of God walks by her side, and in every child is seen children of Jesus and his bride. How wonderful is that, William? So living in balance and harmony is an ancient ideal, this balance of yin and yang, but I would suggest it's needed now. It's all about reclaiming our power, which has afraid been taken away from us. And I'm not being exclusive about any religion. I could probably be referring to all religions. Perhaps it's time to wake up from this long slumber and reclaim our individuality, our direct contact with the divine. And connecting with the land, for me, has been the one. We have much to learn, and of course, much to do. This needs a new battery here. Because other cultures have no problem, do they, with having the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Patrimama festival, there's always the male and the female. Shakti and Shiva, of course, in India. No problem, this idea that you can have the divine feminine. But she was made to sort of go underground, of course, in the form of the Virgin Mary. But she's been there all the time. Yes, just waiting for us to perceive that again. So my last word on religion. I think shamans across the ages would surely echo these sentiments. Religion is for people afraid of going to hell generally. Spirituality is for people who have already been there. Can we relate to that? Yes, I think we can. So I think we've reached a bit of a rock. What's wrong? It's a picture of a rock. I think we have reached a bit of a rock bottom. What on earth have we been up to for the last 2,000 years? Politically, spiritually, religiously. If you didn't laugh, you'd have to cry, really. And at Megalithomania, a big conference I spoke at this year, but a few years ago, I finished early, which has never happened since. And I had time for some questions. And one of them was, "Hey Pete, what's the most special or most sacred place you've ever visited?" And I'm up there on the stage in front of loads of people who are waiting for a cup of tea, like you guys. And I'm thinking, is it Egypt? Some Native American sites? Is it Stonehenge, Newgrounds? And then it actually came into my head. I said, actually, the most sacred site I've ever been to is this one. Is this one. Isn't she beautiful?
Yes.
Isn't she beautiful?
Yes.
She is the only planet of choice. She is unique in the universe. This isn't a sideshow. This is centre stage Mother Earth, I would suggest. And I think we need to get back to regarding her as sacred again. At one time, every person on this planet, every single person, regarded the Earth as sacred. You grew up like that. And I think we need to get back to regarding the Earth as sacred, because once you regard something as sacred, whether it's your holy book, your rosary beads or whatever, you can't possibly destroy it, can you? So we need to get back to regarding the Earth as sacred once more, I would humbly suggest. So going back to symbol, she's a symbol of hope, of an ever-giving mother, of love. Her body is our wisdom of the land that we're talking about this weekend. The land lives. Seek out its spirit. And I have been doing that quite recently. Just starting a project called Dartmoor Mindscapes. And I'm going to do some vision quests. I went on one on my own very recently, and there's a lot coming up during the winter. It's about perceiving the land shamanically. It's about taking yourself off in the rain and the wind, not just on a bright sunny day with your thermos and some sandwiches. And you see spirits, they start revealing themselves to you when you're in the right mindset. They're always there, but you don't see them normally. And this was one I went to, Cute Tour. It was a total whiteout in the landscape. And I thought, I'm still going to go, which sounds a pretty foolhardy to do, but that was the challenge, it was the journey, you know, and I actually got lost on the way back. Fabulous. Getting lost is wonderful. And but when I got to the top, it was worth it, because these things reveal themselves. These are, you know. So were these seen as evidence of spirit of place? These looked almost the same thousands of years ago. The granite erodes over eons, not hundreds of years. So the land lives. Seek out the dragons and the giants. They await perception. This is Vixen Tor. I'm actually sitting on that ledge. This is about 50 feet tall, 40 feet tall. I'm actually perched on that ledge. The land lives. Seek out the rock giants and request a dialogue with them. And I love this quote from Lucien Levi Burl. A legend is captured on the in the very outlines of the landscape. Living books in which myths are inscribed. How beautiful is that? And it's about going out of one's comfort zone, lying under rocks which look as if they're about. Right next to this rock that was perched on the edge was another rock that had actually fallen off the edge. So it's about going out of one's comfort zone, because going out, of course, is a means of going within. To the shaman, there is never one landscape, but rather many landscapes, existing simultaneously, some of which, of course, are internal. I realised, I found out there's 180 of these burial kists on Dartmoor, and one archaeologist said they must have had further uses beyond that of burial. And it got me thinking that you know, they're every few hundred yards across Dartmoor. They're like altars on the landscape. Mostly they've got one block on the top of them. So you're literally on top of the ancestors using this top stone as an altar. And there's nearly always something significant in the line. So I'm going to be studying this more. So altars on the landscape for communing with the ancestors. That's a new concept I'm kind of looking at the moment. And the land lives. Seek out the dragons, the giants, the serpents. They have been waiting your return. Seek out nature's symbolism. It's there all the time. This is one of the places we're going to go to when we take people on vision quests next year. Oh, my heart just opened. I almost couldn't breathe with the love that was coming out of this rock. It took my breath away. So, in conclusion, what any symbol means depends on an individual's interaction with it. The symbol can mean different things to different people, and everybody's correct. What space is, or what any landscape is, depends on who is experiencing it. That's the key thing. You can show a person 20 people the same landscape, and whether they're an architect, an engineer, a farmer, a rambler, they'll all see something different, and everybody's correct. So why not look at the landscape through more shamanic eyes? 2 plugs right at the end. Oh, look at that. A bit most early. For those of you who like walking the landscape, I know you all do, I've just bought a book out with Sue about walking this landscape around Caen and Avebury and around the White Horses. So please have a little look. By sheer coincidence, I had some with me. Just amazing, really. And also, Roma and myself are organising a gatekeeper midwinter pilgrimage around South Dorset, around the Abbotsby area, looking at some prehistoric sites like the Grey Mare. See Roma if you want a book on her stall. And next year I'll be doing landscape walks around Wessex and Dartmoor vision quests are planned. So please come and join us on December the 25th. Roma and myself have got some flyers for it. And I'm just going to end up with this, I think, from the last page in the whole book. I think the real power of symbols and myths is that they possess the ability to engage not only our mind, but also our heart, and perhaps even our very soul. Thank you very much.